Let's talk moves that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers can make. I've made some phone calls. I've been in meetings. I've talked to other teams and, just whether it's scouts or reporters or draft experts or anybody, I've done as much homework as I possibly can to get an understanding of where the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to trade up and where they kind of see this draft as a whole when it comes to value. What do they see in the first round? What do they see in the second round? What do they see in the third round? And so on and so forth. And the general consensus, and we're both laughing at Mr. Luck here. I appreciate you. I'm loving the group chat today. This is incredible. The beer's getting cut off today. Won't lie to you. The general consensus that I have come to, or that I think the league has heading into this NFL draft, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers sit in a good spot to make some moves, a bad spot to sit still. That 20's fine. You could do what you want at 20. 51's great. You could do what you want at 51. Once you get into 84 and 98, you might have waited too long. That most of the NFL views this draft board, this draft class, as once you get to the top or past the top 80 prospects, it's almost like falling off a cliff. That it's a gradual at first until about 100, and then it's almost nobody left. Nobody that's going to come in here and be an immediate starter. Nobody that the league views as, a potential steal in the third or fourth round. That it's a pretty drastic drop-off after pick 100 and really after pick 80. So where does that put the Pittsburgh Steelers? Well, in my final mock draft, and I think that this holds strong, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to move up in the second round, and then they're going to move back up in the third round. They're going to get rid of 84 and 98. They're going to use that to get to the top of the second round to add either an offensive tackle or a center, and then they're going to get to the top of the third round to add a wide receiver, and my guess is Ricky Pearsall. That's who I look at it. From there, you could add a corner in the fourth. You could look at your 2 sixth-round picks and add really whoever's left in whatever positions you need, but you could still fill your top 3 biggest needs, wide receiver, center, and offensive tackle, with those first 3 picks. And I think that they have the pieces to do so. So let me lay out 2 trades for you. Second round pick, you get rid of pick 98 and 51. You move to, I forget what I have here. I believe I have it right here. Pick 34. You swap it out with the Patriots. You move up to 34. In my draft, I have them selecting Armarius Mims. I think he falls to the second round. Second draft, second trade. You move up from 84 to 71. You give up 84 in a 5th round next year. You go get Ricky Pearsall at the top of the 3rd round. Am I crazy? Does it make sense?
If they come out of this draft with Amarius Mims, Graham Barton, who's I'm assuming you would think is going at 20 for them.
That's at that 20. Point. Yeah, I have
Graham Barton, Amarius Mims, and Ricky Pearsall. I think that you walk away pretty happy. If you're a Steelers fan, if you're Omar Khan, if you're anybody that covers the team, if those are your first 3 picks, you've answered all 3 of your questions. Now, Pearsall, is he a bona fide number 2? Probably not right away, but is he somebody that could grow into that? Potentially. And that's the same thing. It goes back to what you were saying earlier, that the Steelers want George Pickens to be that number 1. If you can bring in a Pearsall to be a number 2 by the midway point of the season for just the draft capital of a 3rd round pick, then you're walking away with some pretty good asset management and 3 really good picks.
I agree. I look at it and say, if you can move up and avoid, because that's my thing, is you go into the 3rd round and people make the argument of, oh, what about a cornerback? Okay, well, who are you getting at 98? Nobody. You're not getting anybody good. You're looking at the situation and going, okay, they need to get a corner, but instead of just drafting your needs, go get the best talent. Go get the guys that can make an immediate impact and then see how many positions you can fill, because there's a lot better. You find yourself sitting in situations where it's DeMarvin Leal is on your roster, Isaiah Loudermilk is on your roster, and you're making moves for these guys because you just need to fill the need. You need to fill the gap. Dan Moore. I mean, you could go back. Kevin Colbert, towards the end of his career, did this constantly. He went out and got Buddy Johnsons. He went out and got Terrell Edmonds. He went out and got anybody that filled the position that he needed to fill. That we have a gap here, we have to add to that gap. We can't ignore that gap. And they just went by position, and they missed a lot of the time. Dan Moore Jr., Kendrick Green is a massive one. They just picked the best position that could fill their roster, and it doesn't work out. If you look at it differently and say, how much talent can we add to this roster, and how can we do it in the top 80 picks, I think that they have the possibility and the moves already in place. Shout out Kenny Pickett to move up and get a starting center, a starting offensive tackle, a pretty decent number 2, maybe a number 3 wide receiver. And then, yeah, you don't have any more positions to fill. But if you wait around and fill all 4 of them, how many starters do you have coming out of this NFL draft? I think that the second round move is the most likely for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had to guess, if somebody was to say, what is your bold prediction for the Steelers NFL draft, it would be that they move out of 51 and try to get to the front of the second round within that 24-hour gap so that they could go get either a center or an offensive tackle, whoever they didn't get in the first round. And then from there, they kind of just fill the rest of their board. And I think that a third round pick is just as likely. I don't think the Steelers are going to use 7 picks in this draft. I really don't. I don't think there's 7 picks worth of talent. I don't think that there's enough guys in this draft for you to go out and say, okay, well, we need these guys. You don't. You really don't. Like, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you don't desperately need a 5th inside linebacker. You don't desperately need a 6th defensive lineman. They help, certainly, but you don't need to go get them. You don't need to sit around and do it. If you really wanted to, if you were the Pittsburgh Steelers, you could look at cornerback and say, hey, Darius Rush is going to get a shot there. Corey Trice is going to get a shot there. If nobody works out, I can almost guarantee you Patrick Peterson's sitting in free agency, at least at the start of training camp. And then you could go out and add somebody there. I look at it and say the trades are much more valuable than sitting around and holding those draft picks. 84 and 98 is too late for me. And if you could go up and get 3 guys that are starters, that's my move. That's my move if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had to guess, second round pick, third round pick, both of them up in the air. And just to jump into Adams, because I appreciate the on point questions here from everybody. Andrew Phillips not going to be there in the third round. I don't know if he's going to be there at 84 or 98, but I'm telling you, I'm taking. I'd take Ricky Pearsall. If Max Melton's still there, I'd move up and get Max Melton too. But I'd make a move for one of those guys before I sat around and took a chance that anybody was going to be there at 84 and 98, because I just don't think it's going to be. And I also have heard from a lot of people. And again, I don't have sources inside every building. I don't have sources inside most of the buildings, but just talking to people around the NFL, there are a lot of teams that are trying to move up, that are trying to get in the conversation of 2 second-round picks. How far can we move up in the third round? So I don't think that other teams are going to give the Steelers the luxury of waiting in that second and third round. I think they're going to have to make a move, and I see those as my top 2 moves.